What if the most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself? In this episode, we're diving into how to reconnect with who you really are, what self-love actually looks like, and simple ways to start trusting your own voice again. If you've ever felt disconnected from yourself or unsure about how to care about the real you, this conversation will show you how to begin coming home to yourself. Joining me today is Dr. Barb Alquist, Diana, and Lisa, and we are all divorced Christian women. And we're going to be talking today about your relationship with yourself, learning to like and love who you are again. So let's start by talking about the wounds and maybe the first steps that we need to take to do this important work inside of ourselves. So when you first came out of your marriage, ladies, what were some of the most damaging messages that you believed about who you were? And how did you begin separating your true self from these lies that you'd been told in your marriage or your church? Or maybe these were things that were just embedded in you even from your childhood.
This is Diana. I think I'll jump in and then turn it over to Lisa, because I felt like I actually had to get through the damaging messages before I left. I just did a podcast interview on someone else's podcast, and she point blank asked, "Why did you stay?" Because I was telling her different stages of my marriage. Why did you stay? And it's because I had damaging messages that kept me staying, that I had to get through in order to get out. I believed that I didn't deserve better. You know, we're all supposed to suffer. God calls us to suffer. And I didn't deserve better because I'm a broken person. Like, who am I to deserve anything better than what I'm getting here? I believed that marriage was the place to make me holy, not happy. I think that's exactly what it says in the sacred marriage. And I thought, I'm supposed to suffer here. This is how I grow. I need to go through the ringer. And God hates divorce. And so if I were to leave, then I'm dishonoring him. And if I leave, all my efforts have been for nothing and I've failed. And if I leave, that means I'm not strong enough to persevere in hope, or I'm not believing in God's miracles. And so it was all this shame in these beliefs. So I may have said this before, but when I decided to leave, I thought I was out wrestling with God. I was going on these walks, these spring walks, and listening to the Fine Free podcast, like over and over and over, and butterfly stories, and wrestling with God. So I thought, until one moment I thought I heard him say, or I had an epiphany, or the Holy Spirit nudged me, and I heard, or I said, "I'm not wrestling with you, God, am I?" And he said, "No." And I was like, oh, I'm wrestling with me and all of these beliefs. And so I'm going to release them like they have to be scrubbed away, and I've got to rebuild. So I've done a lot. I'm just really short. I've done a lot to rebuild this. I've listened to podcasts and read books where theologians who are willing to really dig deep into the culture and the meaning of Scripture and what these beliefs, how the Scripture really was meant in its full context for the situation and who it was being delivered to and what was happening, versus what we've contorted it to mean in our Christian culture today. And so I've just done a deep dive into the truth of who God is, what he really wants for us. And I'm rebuilding all my beliefs from there.
That's good. Our identity is tied up with our Creator, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Lisa, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, this is Lisa. So I was raised in the church because I am a missionary's daughter and a preacher's daughter. So I was raised in, it was non-denominational, very similar to Baptist. And so anyways, when I decided that I couldn't stay in my second marriage, I was a widow, and then I got swept off my feet with a guy that went to that church that I had, attended and grown up in. When I was going to leave, the leadership told me that if I left, because there was no record of, or there was no proof that he was being unfaithful, that I would curse my children and my grandchildren to the fourth generation. So that scared me because I adore my children. I have five grandchildren now, and I just adore. I mean, that's, big part of my life. And then the other lie that I believed for since I was a little girl is I needed a man to cover me. I couldn't trust my emotions because I was a female. And because Eden had sinned first, quote unquote, then she blew it for every female from there on up. And I needed a man to complete me and to cover me because I couldn't trust myself. So, I also had to do a lot of untangling, detangling, reconstruction. And Natalie, you talk about programming, and I had to look at my programming. And up until that point, my programming had worked because I had been married before my husband died. And, we raised our kids in church, and we were leaders in the church, and we taught and all that kind of thing. And when this happened to me later on in life, I was asked not to teach anymore. I was asked not to write for the, devotions anymore. And so it was very difficult, to say the least. And
Yeah.
I I'm so thankful though for this topic and what we're going to talk about, because that one of the things that really hit me, because I'm with Diane. I really believed that I was wrestling with God, but when I did decide to leave, like Jesus showed up to me, and it was just love. I was covered in this unconditional love that I just I couldn't understand. I was waiting for him to punish me or zap me. And that is definitely not what the Lord has done since then. It's been 8 years since I've been divorced. And I cannot tell you the growth and the miracles and the love, and learning to love myself the way that God loves me, every single part of me.
And the impact that you've had on other people too. I can say that from the outside looking in, is amazing too. I mean, God took all of that and he's made some beautiful things for your life, but that has a ripple effect on out.
And I'm a walking miracle. I mean, Satan tried to take me down, take me out, and had tried since I've been a little girl. And once I woke up to who I was and whose I am, there's no stopping me,
Yeah.
truly. My power, I got my power it's always there. I just didn't understand that I could love myself to get it back with God's
Yes.
help. Yeah.
Yes. That's so beautiful. So what do you think would be the first step towards reconnecting with yourself? And how do practices like having self-compassion, that self-care that we were talking about, we're going to talk about, actually we mentioned it a couple episodes ago, how we tend to think that things like that are selfish. How do practices though like that actually help that process of reconnecting with ourselves?
I'll kind of jump in here. This is Barb. And it kind of flows from that first question, right? Because having self-compassion is so important. If we think about it, as we had those beliefs, and I struggled with this um, as I got my undergraduate degree in Bible, right? And I was so inundated in these beliefs. And we had these beliefs, many of us, for years and years. And many of us, heard these beliefs every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, every day in our Bible studies, in the books we read. So we had this idea that we had to save the family. And in saving the family, we ideally were, if we let the family go, then the church went down, because the cornerstone of the church is the family. And if the church goes down, the world goes to hell. And because that's our mission, to save the world. So we have this on our shoulders, and we get it day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. So part of that self-compassion is realizing it is a journey.
Yeah.
I've been divorced coming up. I'm not sure when this is going to go live, but in October, I will be 10 years divorced. It is still a journey. Um, and healing from these belief systems is a journey. And I think for all of us, it's understanding, having compassion for ourselves, for our kids, for our friends. It is a journey, and it's a lifelong journey because we have all this time before, and now it's a journey moving forward as well, and compassion for ourselves as we do it. As many of us, we lost ourselves. We totally lost ourselves in many ways, which is a whole nother podcast. And it's a journey to find ourselves again. It's a journey to find joy. It's a journey to decide, what do we enjoy doing? What do we like to read? How do we want to wear our hair? What do we want to dress like? And who do we want to be in this world? How do we want to show it for ourselves? And it's a journey, and having compassion for ourselves. Because Diana, I like what you said. So much has been ingrained in us that it's hard and it's sacrificial, instead of it's a journey and we can have self-compassion for ourselves in that journey.
Yeah. I just want to jump in here and say that Barb is a level 3 IFS certified practitioner. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
And I want to really spend the bulk of this episode talking about IFS, what it is. So we're going to dive into that in just a minute. But before we do that, let's just touch on this idea of self-love versus selfishness. What's the difference between those two things? Is there a difference between those two things, especially for women who were taught that putting themselves last was the godly thing to do? And I think this is a cultural thing too. I don't even think it's just a religious thing. I think culturally we are swimming in patriarchy overall in general in the world. And then of course, religion adds just another extra layer of, and God puts his stamp of approval on this kind of thinking, right? So a lot of us, we're all women here. So we were brought up in that idea that if we put ourselves first, or if we make a decision that is protective of ourselves and it disappoints someone, especially a man, that's not a very godly way to live your life. So let's talk about that. The selfishness versus self-love.
Go ahead, Lisa, and then I'll go after you.
Yeah. So I was taught that it was selfish to put myself first, that it was a form of pride, and God hates pride. I was groomed to meet a man's needs. And if I didn't honor and obey the male role models in my life, and, at home and in the church and in other businesses, I was a bad girl. I learned early to hide my own needs and wants. And I learned to perform for approval and acceptance. I performed for love. And I really believe God was going to punish me, like zap me the minute I screwed up. And I thought that this form of self-sacrifice gave me proverbial gold stars in the kingdom of heaven, which we know is a load of BS, because God opened my eyes. But when I first heard and read about the concept of self-love, it shook me quite a bit. And I believed it was from the devil, from hell. And but I had nothing left. Like what I had been doing didn't work anymore. And so the still small voice inside of me, and inside my gut, it encouraged me to try it. So I did, because I couldn't live with the pain anymore. I didn't want to live anymore, actually. I was I was shunned and, discarded, and after giving everything to everyone all the time. So when I started to love myself the way that God says he loves me, everything changed. And I'm going to tell a little story. I went to Scotland for 30 days by myself because Holy Spirit invited me to, after I filed for divorce. And I was on a train going to Edinburgh to see the Harry Potter stuff and all, just beautiful, beautiful city. And it was early in the morning, and these people got on the train, and they were young kids, and they'd been out, you could tell, partying all night. And the one guy fell, and he hurt his shin, and it was bleeding. And I got up out of my seat. I was a nurse for 23 years, so I bandaged it, took care of him, did some first aid, and I sat back down in my seat. And I'll never forget it. Holy Spirit said, "Lisa, why don't you love yourself the way you just love that man?"
Wow.
And I had to put on sunglasses and cried the whole trip. And so that was a big awakening for me. And then when God says, love your neighbor as yourself, I realized I didn't know how to love myself. I just didn't. So that was life changing for me, and that started that journey of I'm going to start loving me and putting myself first, and it's not selfish. So
Yeah, so I'm just going to do what I like to do. If you listen to the Renew Your Mind podcast, you're going to hear me get out my dictionary a lot. I'm going to get out my dictionary here today because I want to talk to you really quickly about what is selfishness. Real quick, before I get out the dictionary, it's elevating your needs above everything else and thinking that what I need matters most because I am more important than you. And if you don't believe me that that's what selfishness is, here's what the dictionary, Merriam-Webster dictionary says. Selfishness is when you're concerned excessively or exclusively with oneself, seeking or concentration on one's own advantage, pleasure, or well-being without regard for others. That is selfishness, my friend. And I bet you nobody listening to this podcast can say, oh yeah, that's me. I'm always concentrating on my own advantage above everyone else's, my pleasure first, and my well-being without any regard for other people. So you are not selfish. End of story. Put that to rest and start loving yourself. Self-love is I matter too. Taking care of me matters. My existence matters. I'm a person with worth just like other people. And we can still do that with humility. Humility is I'm not more important than anyone else, but also I'm not less important than anyone else. And Natalie, I love what you say all the time, or you say it the way you say it if I don't say it quite right. But you tell people God put you in charge. So I'm going to say God put me in charge of one person. And her name is Diana. That's who I'm in charge of. And you better believe I'm going to love me and take good care of me because God made that my responsibility and I'm not going to fail at that one anymore. So there you go. I'm obviously very passionate about this and I hope that you all feel that passion and adopt this for yourselves.
We can feel it. We really can. Okay, you guys, we're going to get into IFS now, and I'm going to flip a couple of the questions because I think what we need to do before we talk about our inner critic, which everyone's familiar with that concept, right? Everyone listening has probably heard about that somewhere. Yes, we all have an inner critic. Well, we're going to kind of put that into a context. And I want Barb to kind of explain this because she is the level 3 certified IFS practitioner and she could probably explain it better than any of us. Can you explain IFS stands for internal family systems in the simplest terms possible for women who have never heard of this before and might, I don't know what they might think about it when they first hear about it, and then how it connects to our healing from abuse or healing from our, past lives that we had before we got divorced.
Sure. I will try, simply put, we can be really simply and then a little more complicated.
Yeah.
IFS stands for internal family system, which is evidence-based way of understanding our inner world or just what's happening inside of us, our thoughts and our feelings. And it's really simply, we can say we have these different parts within us instead of just saying we have just this one solid part, but that we have these different parts. For instance, when an alarm goes off in the morning, and it's Saturday morning, a part of us might say, I want to get up and get this done and this done and this done and this done. And then another part says, I am freaking exhausted and I'm going to hit the snooze alarm. In fact, I'm really just going to turn it off. Right? So we have these two polarizing parts, and they're both right there, both feelings. And a simple way that, Natalie, I know you talk about this a lot, and same as a lot of other people that work in the IFS. If all of our parts are on a bus, we often have one part that is managing the bus, running the bus, driving the bus. And um, most of our lives are run by our managers. So we have these different parts, and some of them are our managers. Those are the parts that keep our lives together. And what they are managing is our everyday lives. And in the back of the bus are usually the parts of us that are dealing with all that emotions that we don't want to show up, the parts that say, I'm not good enough, the shame. And a lot of those parts have been frozen in time from when we were younger. And when something happens that triggers those parts, some of the other parts on the bus that in IFS language we call firefighters show up because goodness knows we don't want to feel those feelings, because who wants to feel those? So depending on how you act, some people yell, some people drink, some people read, some people scroll. All of those behaviors can be what begins to drive the bus. And so we all have these parts that drive our bus. And everyone has a self that is our center. I call it our wise self. Some people call it our spiritual center. And I think everybody gets to decide for themselves how they want to look at it. Jenna Ramirezma calls it the God image in her book, Altogether You. And that is the part of us that we all have that's undamaged. And it is the part of us that shows up with calm, compassion. It's when we can show up with clarity and confidence. And that is the part of us that is always there and not damaged. And so IFS goal is that there is self-leadership. There is this self that is going to lead our parts. And so let's say something happens. I'll give an example. Holidays are coming up. Everybody is at Thanksgiving or Christmas. And if you have kids, let's say you're there at the table with aunts and uncles and your kids are there. And one of your kids, if it's a young kid, maybe they start throwing a fit. Maybe if it's an older kid, they start cussing, or they just say, no, I don't want to eat. Or maybe they just stay on their phone and they won't put their phone down. And you, who can normally manage your emotions well, all of a sudden, a part of you is really triggered because you're like, oh no, I am feeling like I'm not a good enough parent. I am feeling like if I really was a good enough parent, I could control my kid or my kids would be behaving better. So those parts in the back of the bus, I'm not good enough. I can't do this shame start to be activated. And so if firefighters show up, now if you're a yeller, you might yell at your kids. If you might speak quietly, but you might shame them. But one of your firefighters is going to show up to try to control your kid. And
Yeah.
it happens, right? You show up, that firefighter shows up, it controls the kid, and then there's a calm, your managers come back, and you're like, okay, until a little bit later. And then you're like, oh my gosh, why did I shame my kid? And then you start bullying yourself inside. So another part shows up and starts being like, what kind of mother am I? Why would I do that in front of my kids? So we're all having these inner dialogues in our mind all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the different parts, all these inner dialogues. And IFS is a lens that we can say, let's work with those different parts and help them bring healing. And so that they can, once there's healing and unburdening, we can have more balance and harmony in the system.
Yeah.
And real quick, because I know that wasn't as quick as we wanted it to be,
You're good.
how this relates is to our healing as women that have been through divorce. We lose ourselves. We have lost ourselves in our marriage. I did my entire dissertation on this and did a case study on it. We have lost ourselves. All of the research says in destructive marriages, you have lost your self of agency. You've lost your sense of self. IFS is a tool. It is how you can find that sense of self again so that you can do the healing and walk the journey you need to find yourself, to find the agency, that Lisa had to care for herself, that Diana has, that Natalie has, that I have, so that we can be living and being joyful and enjoying our lives again, but still on the journey, still healing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this so much. Healing by loving these inner parts of ourselves is something that I believe we are called by God to do, because we learn how to love and hold space for other people when we become skilled at loving and holding space for these parts of ourselves. Forgiving other people becomes possible when we forgive these parts of ourselves that maybe aren't showing up in really lovely ways. We learn how to give others freedom to be who they are and to see them blossom and bloom when we give these parts of ourselves inside of us freedom to be who they are and to blossom and bloom and to give them a voice. We give other people a voice when we learn how to give these parts of us a voice. So I think it's really good practice. And I think you see that when people are truly healing, in that process of healing within themselves, they become then healers in the world outside of themselves. All right. So we were going to talk about the inner critic. Actually, Barb she used the term, this bullying part, which I think would be, similar to that inner critic part, right? That people are familiar with. But what does it look like to notice and name these different parts of ourselves, like the scared part or the bully part or the angry part or the hopeful part, the, Pollyanna part, right? And how do you respond if one part wants to do one thing to move forward in one way, like maybe even doing this healing work of IFS? I've had people say, well, I want to do that, but then there's something that just holds me back and thinks, I don't know, do I really want to feel all those big feelings? Do I really want to go there? And that part maybe makes you feel stuck or afraid of moving forward. How do you solve for that?
I also want to say there's a part of our brain, psychologists talk about this, that the primitive part of our brain wants to avoid pain, pursue pleasure, and conserve energy. And so on default, our brain's going to be like, well, hey, exactly the way things are today is a lot less resistance than trying to do something different that's going to take more energy, or it's not going to be as pleasurable, or it's going to create emotional pain. And so when we feel resistance to wanting to jump in and do any of this work, that's just our brain running on default. We go through it we push through it all the time though. Like, oh, I want to lose some weight, so I'm going to not eat the cake and I'm going to exercise. We feel discomfort and that takes energy and we don't get the pleasure, and because we're pursuing something else in the end. So that's critical thinking brain in the front of our brain taking over and saying, no, we have a bigger picture in mind here. We have something that we're moving toward. So I also want to say a little bit about what this bully can feel like, or how we can notice it, this inner critic bully, because I think we're waiting to hear sentences in our head like, I hate myself. But if we don't hear these sentences, or you suck at that. And sometimes we do. Sometimes we hear those thoughts in our brain. But a lot of times this inner critic bully is running on the down low and we're not noticing the stories. And so it could be things like second guessing decisions, even simple ones. It could be feeling guilty for wanting to have more peace in your life, or to have time for yourself, or to have better experiences. It could be replaying mistakes from your marriage or from other relationships. It could be taking on the blame for the things that haven't gone right in your life. It could be comparing yourself to other women and then, or other people, and thinking that you come up short. It could be feeling stuck, what you just alluded to, afraid to move forward. And also, that impending doom, like, even if I do try to move forward, I'm probably going to screw it all up anyway. So what's the point? Or it's going to be too hard. So if you can notice any of those things happening, I'm going to give one strategy and then I'll turn it over to other people. One strategy I use a lot is, if you notice any of these things happening, you just ask yourself, okay, what's the thought about that? Like, I feel stuck. What's the thought? What thought's keeping me feeling stuck? I keep replaying this mistake. Why? What is that? What's the thought that has me replaying that mistake? Like, boy, I really screwed that up. Or I'm second guessing every decision. What thought is having me second guess this decision? Like, I'll probably choose the wrong thing. Whatever thought you can uncover, and you don't have to get this, there's no exactly right, just whatever one comes to your mind. You can put it through a little litmus test and just ask yourself, is this thought true? Like, I'm going to choose wrong. Is that true? How do I know that? Can I actually predict the future? So no, if it's not true, maybe that's not a good thought. That maybe that's just an inner critic bully thought. Does this thought serve me? And remember, we're not selfish. We're loving ourselves here. We want to serve ourselves to have a good life and honor God. Is that thought serving me to think I'm probably going to make the wrong choice? No, it's not serving me because I'm staying here stuck. And is this thought, the last question I often ask for a thought is this thought honoring God? Well, when I'm staying stuck and I'm not moving forward and I'm not being the best version of God created me to be, I'm not growing, I'm not becoming more Christ-like, I'm not evolving into the best version of me possible, is that honoring God? No. And then we get to challenge that thought. Now, this would be a whole other podcast probably to try to teach you all how to create a new thought that would be helpful. But we've got to be willing to let go of these inner critic bully thoughts that are keeping us stuck and think something that is, make sure it's true. The truth is, I don't know if I'm going to be making a good or bad decision. And maybe there is no good or bad decision. Maybe it's just a step forward and it'll work out exactly as I want, or it won't. I don't actually know. That's truth. So the truth is, I want to try something because I want to get unstuck. And I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm willing to go forward anyway. This is the kind of thing Natalie does with people in coaching in the Flying Higher and then the Kaleidoscope all the time. And Barb's a coach there. I'm a coach there. This is the kind of thing we help people with all the time. So, okay, that's it for me.
Okay, so just to tie that in with what Diana just shared with you is a cognitive behavioral therapy tool, and how I've tied that into IFS is that these thoughts that we have these thoughts, they're all of our thoughts are coming from different parts of us. So getting to know these different parts that tend to have different parts of us tend to have core beliefs, and getting this self-awareness about where these thoughts are coming from and why these parts of us have these core beliefs is important. If you don't know, like what Diana said, if you don't know what's going on underneath the hood of your bus, if you don't know, then you can't change it. But when we start to get to know our parts and with curiosity and compassion, now we have self-awareness that's like on this conscious level. Now we can make intentional choices about, do we want to keep that we can challenge those parts. Do we want to keep that idea? Do we want to keep that core belief, or do we want to change it? And that sets some of these parts free so that they don't have to be so sad and scared anymore. They can actually feel free to romp in fields of grace, is one of my favorite things to say. That's what
And
I like to think.
let me add real quick. We get to first validate that part. Like, hey, little
Yeah,
one, I
yeah,
do that. I'm like, hey, little one, I see that you think you're going to screw up this decision. It really makes sense that you're thinking that. I get it. I see you. I understand why you're thinking that because of things that have happened to you in the past and pain you've been through. I get it. And I might even ask myself, how do you feel about that? And then I might think, wow, it's scary. Yes, you're right. I see why it's scary. And we get to spend time with that part. And yeah, this is a lot to do. That's why I'm saying, join Flying Higher if you want, because this kind of work takes a lot. Barb specializes in coaching people through this. It's a process to learn this. So if this is new to you today, just keep opening yourself up to learning about IFS and cognitive behavioral therapy and see how it can help you and be curious with yourself.
That's
yeah,
Diana. I agree with that. Like I use that word a lot in my self-talk is, well, that's curious, and that little girl, that little bully in me, that bullies my parts. I sometimes, when one of my grandkids throws a temper tantrum, sometimes they just need a little bit of connection. And I will, if they want held, I will hold them and love them and hey, sweetheart, it's okay. And Gigi's right here and I love you. And I do the same thing for my inner parts. And I say, come here, Lisa, honey, what's going on? Like that, that was very curious how you responded. Let's look at that. And I'll, say sometimes, when the words come out the way I didn't want them to, or I act in a way that is less than less than kind or noble or lovely. Um, I will say, well, let's do a forensic analysis once I calm down and see what happened in that situation. How can I love what part showed up and why did that part show up? So I say that all the time. That's very curious. And that helps me separate, but also love myself, my inner child, inner parts. And also, Holy Spirit loves me. Jesus loves me. God the Father loves me so, so much. He told me like he loves every cell in my body. I can't explain it. I had a vision one time and he just the love in every single cell that if he loves me that way, then I should love me that way too.
yeah, yeah. You're
Even when
collaborating
I'm
with God when you do that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's when I work with clients and myself, and Natalie, I think you talked about this, asked about the polarization, about the parts of us that don't want to do this work and that kind of don't want to go there. And I think we often have parts, like parts that show up that don't want to do something or don't want to. And that's when we need to slow the process down. And that's when we need to say, okay, we have been bullied enough out here, right?
yeah,
And that's when we need to slow the process down and say, okay, we are not going to bully our inner world. We are going to go as slow as our inner world needs us to go. And we are going to just get to know our parts at the pace that they need us to go at. So if we have parts that don't want to jump into the process, well, let's slowly get to know them the way they want to get to be known. And and that's how I work with my clients. That's how I encourage other people to begin to get to know their parts. Do it so that your whole inner world, all your parts are working together. Because I'll often have clients that are show up and their financial part is like, let's go, let's get this done. Or their part that's like, I need to go deep. But then their other parts are like, wait, no, hold on. This is scary. Or, I have some other things I need to talk about first. And so we work with all of the parts so that we move forward together, and the journey is a journey that's together.
Yeah. So, okay. So Barb, that has to do with too with learning how to trust yourself. If your parts can trust your inner system and trust you as the wise leader,
Yeah.
how do you build that trust after years of uh, decades of doubting your instincts? And what boundaries do you think are important for protecting that healing relationship that you are now trying to build and make those inner little connections with yourself inside?
There's a lot to that question, right?
Yeah.
Building that inner trust is saying things like, we say in IFS, slow is fast, right?
Hmm.
So it is having inner boundaries with yourself, whether it is, I often talk with people, um, my clients that are, say, on a forum or with others. I say, if you're going to share about your IFS work, make sure all your parts are on board with what you share before you share it. Because if the part that's really excited shares it, well, there might be another part that's like, I don't know, that was too vulnerable, right? But if
Yes.
it's out there first, then it's already out there. But
Yeah.
building trust is sitting with your parts and saying, is this okay? Building trust within your system, we do it daily, and is by saying, wow, th- this person is toxic. I am going to start having boundaries with this person, and working with your parts, having boundaries so that your parts know that you're protecting yourself.
Mhm.
And even little simple ways to begin to care for yourself, having daily practices. Um, it's all those things flow into building trust if you're caring for yourself, emotionally, mentally, all those ways, like simple things. I was thinking about this as I was getting ready. Um, we are all busy women. We work, right? And most of the people that are listening to this, divorced Christian women, are single moms and they work and they're busy. Two things I do that take almost no time, but my system loves it. When I put my face cream on in the morning, I choose to sit down. It's like 30 seconds, but I sit down and I just rub that cream on my face instead of just slapping it on in 10
Yeah.
seconds, 30 seconds. And I stay present and I just breathe. That's building trust. When I blow
Yes.
my hair dry, I just feel that warmth and I blow my hair. That's like 2 minutes, right? But I just choose during that time to breathe and to feel the warmth on my skin. Like simple things. You can be really busy, but you can slow down
Yes.
during two little times. And
And how
sit,
where you're slowing down is in your mind. You're actually being
yes,
present in that moment, and that is what slows it down for you.
yes, it's slowing down in the moment and just breathing and being with yourself. So there's lots and lots of ways to build trust, but even from simple to boundaries, etc.
Yeah. I will that I love that you shared that. Because that shows like the micro ways that you can do it, and it doesn't take any of your extra time, right? Sometimes people think, oh, I'm gonna have to do parts work and that's just gonna take it right out of me. No, 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 this is gonna like infuse you with more energy and more safety and more feelings of regulation. I'll just give one example as you were talking of a more of a macro thing, where I was at a conference And the conference was almost over. And I'm one of those people that, you spend a lot of money to go to something and you want to get everything that you can out of it, right? It's on the last day, and someone stood up, and I won't go into the details, but they completely derailed the whole conference. And now the speaker was addressing this issue. And I won't go into details, but it was really, really bad. And part of me thought, I should stay and learn what I can out of this. It was curious how the speaker handled it. And I thought, well, I could learn some things from how this speaker is handling it. But another part of the other parts of me were going, we need to go. We got to get out of here. Fire, fire, fire. And I sat with it, and I sat for probably an hour and a half while this drama was going on around me. And we even took a break, and I sat with it during my break, and I just checked in with everybody inside of me. And I decided to leave. I decided that what was going to make most of me inside feel better was if they knew I had their back and that I wasn't going to purposefully put them into something so we could learn a lesson, or so that we could, I don't know what. That was my I have got parts of me that are like, well, we have to suffer sometimes just because we learn most when we suffer. And my parts at that point in time in my life needed to know, no, Natalie gets us out of situations where we're suffering inside,
Yep.
where we're getting triggered, and where we're feeling like we might fall apart. And that was the best. I'm so glad I did that. It was the best thing I could have done. I don't know what happened that last 2 hours of the conference. I have no idea. And I don't care. I don't need to know. And all I know is that it was the best thing for me. So that's more of a macro thing.
Yeah.
Lisa, go ahead.
Oh,
Barb.
no, I was going to say, I was talking with a client this week about a victory. It was because she was in her adult child was getting more and more aggressive verbally with her. And she said, so she took a pause and went into the bathroom and did some breathing, self-regulating, and walked back out of the bathroom and said, I'm going to need to leave now because this has not become a good conversation for me. I love you, and I'm going to text you later, and we can
Wow.
discuss this. That is building trust.
Yes.
That is taking care of ourselves and being like this idea of taking a pause, which is what you did, right? And being able to pause, be with our parts that are like, what's happening? And then being able to work with the parts and address them and caring for ourselves. That's building the trust inside, which then will lead to the deeper work, because the deepest part of this work is the unburdening process. And that unburdening process happens when we can help those young parts that are frozen in time and help them unburden their memories and take new beliefs in, so that when situations happen, things aren't as intense anymore.
Yeah.
And they're not frozen in time in that memory. That's what happens so often when we show up in this crazy way. It's because we're showing up in that 5-year-old space.
Yes.
We're showing up as 5 or 8 or 10 or
Yep.
middle school, right? And then if we can build this self-trust so that we can eventually work with these parts and unburden them,
Yeah.
that's when the true healing begin. But we got to do all this self-trust inside first.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a great therapy for PTSD and complex PTSD too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lisa, did you want to share a little bit about how you've built trust in your own life?
Sure. I love the micro and the macro examples. I take time, 5 minutes here and there. I am a type A. I'm kind of ADD. I diagnose myself. It serves me very well in the businesses that I run. but I need to slow my roll during the day. So I take time just to breathe, I'm having a cup of tea right now to check in with Abba Daddy. Also, just recently, there was a part because I've been asking the Lord, he's my best friend, and I said, hey, is there I'm ready to go into some more healing, and I visited my 2-year-old self and my 6-year-old self at different times, and he took me into this situation and showed me some things. And I had to invite that part back into the fold, and it took several times of going back into this situation. And I had, Holy Spirit was right there. Jesus was holding my hand, so I felt very safe because I built trust within myself and who I am and who I was made to be. But that was amazing. I went back, and then the 6-year-old self, there was something that happened, a part that was stuck. I didn't even know it. And I was quiet and said, is there anything else I need to see? And he showed me that. But I wanted to say, and I didn't write this book, but this lady named Lois Mickelson wrote a book called Hidden Within. It's a 40-day prayer journal. And it helped me see another layer of IFS because Barb, I've counseled with Barb, and she's amazing. And this book also brought another layer about going to those parts and inviting them back into yourself. And this work is so powerful because I am regaining my power and my authority over me and the people that I love, and even people that that are very difficult, they respect me. And it's amazing. Like I'm on a level playing field. I've never been here before, and I love it. So I encourage anybody that has not tried this to just give it a go. It's incredible.
What's the name of the book that you just mentioned?
Hidden Within. It's on Amazon. It's free. You can download it. It's 40-day devotions by Lois Mickelson. And Rebecca Davis helped her write it. She's an author coach. It is excellent. It is
Okay.
excellent. So
Okay, I'll put
it
that in
was
the show notes.
it was helpful. And that's when I went back and visited my 2-year-old and 6-year-old self, which I didn't even know they needed rescued, but they did. So, and they're
Wow.
back with me.
Wow. That's
So yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Well, before we end, I just want to say a few things. First of all, I want to invite those of you who are listening to join Flying Higher, where this is actually one of the most important things that you can learn about in Flying Higher is how to use IFS concepts to get to know and love yourself, all the parts of yourself, the good parts and the problematic parts, right? This was definitely a game changer in my own life. And in fact, it's what I learned about my own parts and how to coach myself. I actually put that into my spiritual memoir, All the Scary Little Gods. And now at the time of this recording, it's not available, but by the time you guys hear this, it's going to be available as a free audiobook. I want to give that audiobook away for free, along with a framework that I used that you'll be able to see throughout that book. But then I put it into a framework that people can use to heal from emotional and spiritual abuse if you have that in your history. So you can hit up the show notes if you're interested. You can also get that book on Amazon in a paperback, Kindle, or Audible formats. But I help women walk through that same framework inside of Flying Free and Flying Higher. So if you often feel shame or shut down or angry or like you are hopeless about your life, or if you feel like why do I keep making the same choices over and over and over again? And you would like to change your life, you want to change that and turn that around. This is the most important work that you are ever going to do. And those of us who are here, we would love to help you do it. You can go to joinflyinghigher.com to learn more. If you want to work personally with an IFS practitioner, Barb is the one that I recommend. Again, she is level 3 certified IFS practitioner. She has several years of experience under her belt, and she has helped many of the women in our program. And Barb, why don't you tell them where they can find you and your work?
They can find me at my website, which is integrativecoachingforlife.com, or they can email me at integrative life for integrative life for coaching at gmail.com. And Natalie, I want to say, and we need to do a podcast sometime to reiterate the fact that when I worked with the women in my dissertation, that the women that I worked with that had done a psychoeducation course, such as Flying Free, and actually did the work, were the ones that had the better stats in my um, research, all that I did.
Wow.
So they weren't just part of a program like Flying Free and Flying Higher. They were ones that were in it and doing the
Yes.
coursework. And they were the ones that were experiencing healing. So IFS and the coursework, your coursework was really important in that healing process.
Yeah, that is so good to know. I know there are a lot of people or a lot of therapists who actually recommend their clients to come into Flying Free or Flying Higher, because what they've noticed in their practices is that if their client is going through this, I like how you called that. I've never heard it called that, psychoeducational coursework inside Flying Higher, Flying Free. They then bring the things that they're learning, and their therapy sessions are so much more productive because they're able to talk through, now this is what I learned, now help me, personal therapist or personal IFS practitioner, help me to apply this to my own life, or how can I integrate this into my own, where I'm at personally in my own healing process. So it's integrative coaching for life.com.
forlife.com. Yep.
Yeah. Or the email was a little confusing.
Oh, sorry. My email is integrativecoachingforlife@gmail.com.
Okay. So it's the same thing as the website.
It's the same thing. It's just
Okay.
at Gmail.
All right, good. And then, of course, Diana's got a podcast called Renew Your Mind podcast. So if you want to do some mind shift work, that's what she basically goes over in her podcast. And she will teach you so many things just by listening to her free podcast. And she is also a coach. So if you want coaching on the kinds of things she coaches on, just go to renew your RYL. Say it.
RYM, renew your
Your
mind.
Life.
RYM podcast.com.
I should have just said, you say it. I don't know why.
Yep.
I try to do it every time. I'm sorry.
I try to make it easy.
I know. For some reason, my brain doesn't like individual letters, and it doesn't like individual numbers. It does not like that stuff. It literally, my brain can't function. So anyways, ideas, my brain loves ideas, but not these letters and numbers. Okay, you guys, thank you so much, all of you, for contributing and offering your thoughts about this. I hope this sparks some ideas and creates shifts in people, whether or not they end up coming and getting some help with us or not. Maybe this will plant some seeds in some of our listeners. And this could be, the seed might go down inside of them and percolate for a year or two, and then end up coming and growing some amazing fruit down the road. That's my hope and prayer. And so thank you for being here, ladies. And then those of you who are listening, thank you for listening. And we've got one more episode for this season, and then we're done for the season. Then we're going to work on season 2, or season 3, which is going to be all about money. And that'll start in, I think, February. All right. Until next week, fly higher.